T.D. Jakes, the big bishop of the Catholic Church. Don't we just love his preaching, especially when he gets his Catholic slant on the Sabbath? Let's have a listen. And when the Jews were gone out of the assembly, the Gentiles besought that these words might be preached to them the next Sabbath. And the next Sabbath day came almost the whole city to hear the word of Elohim. Now, firstly, this was after the atonement of Yahushua, Mr. Jakes. Secondly, this was after Shaul and the apostles had been saved by grace. Well, not grace, favor, the kindness of Yahuwah. Let me show you perhaps something that you missed the first time. Let's insert that important verse between these two again. Verse 43. Now, when the congregation was broken up, many of the Jews and religious proselytes followed Paul and Barnabas, who, speaking to them, did what? Persuaded them to what? Continue in the favor, grace, if you want to say, of Elohim. So here they are, telling them to continue in the favor of Elohim. Now, how do you continue in the grace or favor of Elohim if you are meeting with the whole city on the Shabbat, which is supposed to have been done away with by this grace, or this day of grace? And the very preacher who preaches grace, who's leading it? None other than Paul and Barnabas. Well, by now you should have got it. This is only possible because grace didn't get rid of the Shabbat. The Shabbat is here to stay, people. There remains a Sabbath keeping to the people of Elohim. Duh. This is for Jews and Greeks, every disciple of Yahushua. And the works of righteousness are not done away with, since we labor to enter into that rest that is to come at the day of Yahuwah. Duh again.
Why are you worried about stuff that I've already taken care of? Why are you burdened about things that I've already moved out of the way? Come unto me, all ye that are weak and heavy laden, and I will give you rest.
Oh, so Mr. Jakes continues to mix up rest with Sabbatismos, Sabbath keeping. Was Yahushua replacing the Sabbath with rest? No. Come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Anapol. Take my yoke upon you, and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Yahushua speaks to the people here who are tired and heavy laden. Why were they heavy laden? First of all, let's look at what heavy laden means. Fortitzo is the Greek word, and it means to load up in the literal sense as you would load up a vessel or an animal. But in the figurative sense, it means to overburden with ceremonial, spiritual anxiety. Do you think it is referring to literal loads put on an animal, or to the figurative meaning, spiritual anxiety? Well, let's look at the only other instance of this Greek word, fortitzo. Yahushua uses it when rebuking the teachers who corrupt Torah. Woe to you also, lawyers, for you load men with burdens grievous to be carried, and you yourselves do not touch the burdens with one of your fingers. Now, we have covered this previously. Yahushua has divided the traditions of man from Torah. Sometimes these traditions are called takanot, and he explained that the Torah of Moses is to be kept, but not these man-made oral laws. Although fortizzo is not mentioned here in this verse, we see hard-to-carry burdens mentioned, reflecting the same idea as fortizzo, those ceremonial spiritual anxieties caused by man-made traditions. Then Yahushua spoke to the crowd and to his disciples, saying, "The scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. Therefore, whatever they tell you to observe, ignore them." Because they're trying to make you keep the Torah, these legalistic Pharisees. And, we're not supposed to be under the law. No, he says, observe and do. You need to do Torah, but do not do according to their works, dead works. For they say and do not do. That is why they're dead. The Torah, however, is life, because it is lived. That is why it is called the law of the spirits. For they bind heavy and hard to carry burdens and lay them on man's shoulders, but they will not move them with one of their fingers. This is almost exactly the same wording as Matthew 11. But they do all their works in order to be seen of men. Now, one can't help thinking about the Vatican, who likes to be seen by men, sitting on his throne. And he did a similar thing, the Pope, to those who were keeping Shabbat centuries after Yahushua, her Sabbath keeper, would be called a heretic by the Catholic Church. He would simply be taken to the Inquisition and prosecuted with painful torture and die an excruciating death. So, no small burden there. In 305 AD, they had already enforced fasting on the Shabbat to make it unpopular, to add burden to it. The Church of Spain was still keeping the Shabbat, but they were at odds with the Catholic Church for enforcing this Sabbath fast. They tried to make the Sabbath void in favor of Babylonian Sunday worship. Believers were keeping Shabbat. Here we have an account in AD 335 to 375. The Persians, the popular complaint, they despise our sun god. They have divine services on Saturday. They despise our sun god. Did not Zoroaster, the sainted founder of our divine beliefs, institute Sunday 1,000 years ago? So this would have been about 700 BC in honor of the sun, and replaced the Sabbath of the Old Testament. So we see the opposition of Shabbat coming directly for centuries from the sun god worshippers, of whom the Catholic Church is now head agent. Now, what has Yahuwah said about the Shabbat? In Isaiah 58:13, if you turn your foot because of the Sabbath, from doing what you please on morally appointed days, so turn the other way, repent, and do what the Shabbat requires, and call the Sabbath a delight. Wow. The pure of Yahuwah, honorable. But what do they call us who keep Shabbat, who want to be pure Kodesh? They call us legalists or heretics, and shall honor him, not doing your own ways, nor finding your own pleasure, nor speaking your own words. Yeah, no oral law, no fake heresy and doctrine and man-made traditions. This is in direct opposition to false religion, the Shabbat, if it's kept the right way, because you're honoring Yahuwah's Torah. It's a delight. Then what does Yahuwah promise? Does he promise you cursing if you keep the Shabbat? No. He says, then you shall delight yourself in Yahuwah. That's amazing prophecy. That's an amazing promise. There's no curse if you keep Shabbat. You shall delight yourself in Yahuwah. Your love for Yahuwah will grow because you will be spending time with him, 24 hours with him. free of the burdens of false religion out there and all the cares of the world. And he says, and I will cause you to ride on the high places of the earth and feed yourself with the inheritance of Jacob your father. For the mouth of Yahuwah has spoken. For the mouth of Yahuwah has spoken. Note how Yahuwah makes a dig at the so-called our law of man by making it clear that he is making this declaration from his own mouth. It is his our law and his Torah alone. So you know, those little mouths of the so-called our law of man can go and take a hike, to put it plainly. And so can T.D. Jakes, who tries to take the delight of the Sabbath away by taking the Sabbath away altogether so that no one can delight in Yahuwah. Well, I say, if Mr. Jakes wants to take the delight of Yahuwah away from people, he should keep his messy little Torahless church to himself. And I'm not joking, because he talks about the mess that everybody is in who are supposed to be following Yahuwah and who are supposed to be saved and under the blood of Yahushua. What the hell are they still a mess for? If Yahuwah has said the Shabbat is a delight, very clearly and simply, which will cause you to delight in him, as opposed to be in spiritual anxiety by false doctrine, then why would his son Yahushua now come and say that the Shabbat is some kind of a heavy burden that causes anxiety, and now needs to be replaced by some other kind of rest? By Mr. Jakes and his ecumenical Vatican Sunday worshipping nonsense. In fact, I'm going to cross over now to the last segment where he just goes on about the big mess of everything. Everything is a big spiritual shipwreck that needs some kind of rest from the fake Torahless Jesus.
In order to make this journey, you have to make it without baggage. You can't carry loads of bags and weight on you in order to be free. And Jesus gives you an invitation to come unto him. Now you have to come to him. You will not get rest from anybody else. If you go to anybody else, you're going to find more work.
Well, naturally you're going to have more work if you don't have a Shabbat. And T.D. Jakes is telling you it's done away with. So why are you listening to him? This is what happens when you listen to false doctrines, which bring on the very burdens that T.D. Jakes is saying are taken away by this fake Jesus. Meanwhile, he's the one who's adding them.
This is why our marriages end in divorce. We marry trying to find somebody to take weight off of us. And as soon as we get to know them, we find out that they have baggage too. And the combination of your mess and their mess becomes so heavy that the marriage begins to break, because you weren't looking for a man, you were looking for a Messiah.
Well, if you were looking for the true Mashiach, you'd know what kind of man to look for, because he would be Torah keeping. And you wouldn't have such a mess. The covenant of marriage can only truly happen between two covenant-keeping people that obey Yahuwah, that are Yah-fearing. So of course there's going to be divorce. There is no loyalty. And by encouraging men not to keep Shabbat, then when are they going to be teaching Torah to their family, to their sons, to their daughters, and to their wives? When are they going to learn to worship Yahuwah? When are they going to assemble with other believers? No, they're going to be too busy having fun day or Sunday or whatever they want to call it, and working to pay all their bills of greed, because they want to compete with Daddy Jakes and maybe his SUV or whatever he owns, you know, that kind of thing.
Oh God, I wish we did have time.
No, you don't want more time, Mr. Jakes. That's why you don't keep Shabbat. You want to just spend a little hour here and just run off and leave the people in deception, so that they can go and do their own pleasures on their Sunday.
You're not looking for a wife, you're looking for a maid, somebody to clean up your mess and fix your life and make you feel better about yourself. When in reality, whoever you marry is just as messed up as you are. And as soon as you find out their secrets, you start falling, what you call falling out of love. It's just a combination of their bags and your bags has made the weight so heavy that the ship begins to sink. But if both of you would cast all your cares on him, oh, y'all don't hear what I'm saying. I don't care how fine they are, ladies. Don't let him fool you. He may be 6'4" and fine. He may be a hunk. He may be strapping and good looking. But beneath all of that hairy chest and those big biceps, brother got some baggage up in here. Believe me when I tell you, sister may be built like a Coca-Cola bottle, 36, 24, 36. But while you adding up them numbers, add in the weight of her past, her childhood, and her bondage. Because when you carry her over the threshold, it ain't just her you carry. You carrying her mama, her grandmama, her great-grandmama, her first husband, who left her, who raped her, who abused her. You got a whole lot of stuff to carry over the threshold when you pick up sister girl.
Wow, so not only are you still the same old creature you were before, but you're gonna be carrying the baggage of other creatures. You're gonna be following the examples of other sinners and imitating their sin. Well, you will if you keep watching this Torah-less nonsense of TD Jakes, because you're not following the true Mashiach, who keeps Torah and teaches Torah. You haven't been made a new creation, a new creature. The old things are still there. So, and if anyone is in Mashiach, that one is a new creature. Old things have passed away. There's no more baggage. Behold, all things have become new. So I don't want to hear about this baggage stuff. Really, I don't. And the church don't want to know about the Torah, so it is full of sinners, heavyweights. Therefore, since we also are surrounded with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the transgression of Torah, which so easily besets us. Get rid of your sin, keep Torah, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. Keep Shabbat, people. Do you remember where this verse is from? The cloud of witnesses, all those who had emunah, moral conviction, that it had listed, and we went through the whole list, and what was their motivation? The better thing, the better country that is to come. But you people are all focusing on here and now, Sunday, fun day. You're not focusing on the Shabbat, the shadow of things to come in Shamayim.
Oh, y'all don't want to talk to me. It's unavoidable. You have children, they look so cute. You birth them, you hold them, you're dressing them up real courtly. You put on nice little dresses on them, you spray them down with baby powder and baby oil. They look so wonderful. You try to protect them all you can, but I don't care if you keep them locked up in a room in a safe environment, away from all predators.
Well, ain't that just dandy? Jakes, the lying wolf, the big predator, who promotes pagan Christmas and takes the delight of the Sabbath away from the children, now acts holier than thou. People, keep your children out of church and in Torah.
Baggage. It is inherent in the human nature that ultimately life brings baggage. Say that. Life brings baggage. Say it again. Life brings baggage.
Well, Mr. Jakes, how can you say that there is baggage? Didn't you say a little earlier that Jesus came to give us peace and rest eternally here on earth? And didn't you say that this had replaced Yahuwah's Shabbat as though it were some kind of superior peace and rest? Well, it doesn't sound like it. Perhaps we are still on earth after all, and not yet in Shamayim.
The longer you live, the more you pick up, the more you collect, the more you have to deal with, the more you have to face. The longer you get up in the morning, you run into something every day. After a while, you get to the point that you're scared to get out of the bed some morning because you wonder what the next day is going to bring. And if you don't learn how to cast it off of you, pretty soon you're getting stress attacks and hypertension and nervous breakdowns, personality disorders, mood swings, snapping at people, fighting at people, cussing at people, yelling at people. People can't figure out what's wrong with you. It's because you're heavy laden, you're covered down with burdens, you're dealing with issues and you're dealing with stress. And as soon as you get tired of all of that mess being on your back, Christ is standing saying, come unto me, all ye that are weak and heavy laden, I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for my yoke is easy and my burdens are light. And most of you shout about it and most of you dance about it, but you never responded to it and really entered into the...
Well, before it's cut off there, Jakes is saying they have never entered into the rest. Well, naturally, this is what it is. It's false religion. He says they sing about and talk about it. Whatever. That's false religion. And Jakes is helping them along by taking away the Shabbat. They will never enter into the delight of Yahuwah as he has promised in Isaiah. This verse, come unto me and I will give you rest, has been used totally out of context because the people Jakes is speaking to, they don't even have anxiety about not being able to keep Shabbat, for instance, not being able to keep Torah. I think their anxiety is probably more like not being able to get a big enough pagan Christmas gift, perhaps, or not being able to keep up with the Joneses or the Jakeses, perhaps. These people hate the Torah, they hate Yahuwah, they hate his Shabbat. So, they're not even in the same context as those Yahushua was speaking to here. Yahushua has spoken about those who are spiritually anxious to seek after righteousness. They are hungry and thirsty. If you've been ever hungry and thirsty, you'll know the anxiety involved. That is the spiritual hunger and thirst we're supposed to have as we seek after his commandments. And then we are filled spiritually. Yahushua tells us who believe and want to keep his Torah to take his yoke upon him, as opposed to the Pharisaical yoke, to come out of false religion, come out of Babylon, so that we can keep Torah. So we who have this spiritual anxiety, or this anxiety to want to obey Yahuwah, you'll have it. Yahushua will call you, Yahuwah will call you, and you'll feel it, and you'll come out of your church. You will come out of that Babylonian system, and you will feel that lightness. I did it, and it's wonderful. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn of me. For I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Now let's look at the word yoke. It refers to servitude, servanthood, to obeying Torah, to a law or obligation. The Torah is not done away with. We carry the yoke on us that is placed on us by Yahuwah or Yahushua. As the master encourages the animal to plow in a straight line while we are under his yoke, Yahushua too, the master of the Shabbat, keeps our path straight. And he did that which was right in the sight of Yahuwah, and walked in the ways of David his father, and declined neither to the right nor to the left. The yoke of the Shabbat is light when all the false added burdens imposed by the false teachers are removed. And we do not move right or left. We go straight. We are laboring, not resting. Note, for he says, it is still a labor. This yoke of servanthood, of pure and simple Torah keeping with regards to the Shabbat, is not just light, but a delight. Restored to what it was meant to be from the beginning. It was made for man to be a delight, not for man to burden it with oral law and traditions of false religion. Yahushua came to make this possible again by purifying the Sabbath. he came to make the law honorable again, not do away with it. And it is prophesied that Yahuwah is well pleased for his righteousness' sake. He will magnify the Torah and make it honorable, not do away with it. And he sent his son to do that. That's why it says he came to teach or to preach the law fully. He made it clear that healing on the Shabbat was not a transgression. He made it clear that somebody who was hungry could gather a bit of grain. Him and his disciples did that. He made it clear that life and death situations on the Shabbat were to be attended to, even if it were an animal. And if it was good enough for an animal, then it was good enough for a person. He made it clear that carrying a mat on which you sat was not considered servile work. He did not tell anyone to go and collect sticks on the Shabbat and make a fire, punishable by death, by Yahuwah's own command, as you know. If Yahushua really wanted to replace the Shabbat, then he would have told them to go and collect sticks and make a fire. That would have been a perfect example of doing away with the Shabbat. But he did not. Yahushua did not break the Shabbat or teach men to break it. He only challenged those things which had been incorrectly prohibited by so-called oral law, those things that were burdening the people. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Yahushua does not say, let me take the burdens and yoke off of you. No, he still gives you a yoke under which you work. And that is the work of righteousness, which is further made light by the motivation of love toward Yahushua and his Father. For this is the love of Elohim, that we keep his commandments. Which commandments? All of them that apply, which is the Shabbat as well. And his commandments are not grievous or burdensome, as the modern King James Version puts it. So the Shabbat is not a burden. Yahushua does not take it away from us. He makes it easier for us to keep it. Being the master of the Shabbat, he has gotten rid of all the principalities and powers which have tried to put burdens on it. Again, this rest that Yahushua is giving is anapo, a refreshing, a comfort, and it does not replace Sabbatismos, the weekly Sabbath keeping, but it refreshes it and makes it a delight to keep. We see the use of anapo, rest. And he said unto them, come ye yourselves apart into a desert, and rest a while. For there were many coming and going, and they had no leisure so much as to eat. They needed a rest. Simple, not Sabbath day. They rested a while. They weren't lying there for the rest of their lives, eternally resting. In fact, there's a verse using the very same word and rebuking the idea of eternal rest here on earth because of riches. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your ease. There's the word anapo. Eat, drink, and be merry. But Elohim said to him, fool, this night your soul shall be required of you. So much for eternal rest here on earth with the prosperity church. However, anapo is closely related to the Hebrew word nuach, from which we have noach or noah, which also means rest. Again, this rest existed in the presence of favor, or otherwise pagan word grace. But Noah found kan or favor in the eyes of Yahuwah, right? This was indeed an age of favor or kan for Noah and his family, so great that Yahuwah would destroy everything on the earth but save them alone. But did that replace the Shabbat? No. And that amazing favor allowed us a chance to receive the favor of redemption through his son, because Yahuwah could have killed the whole of creation. Now therefore I pray you, if I, Moses, have found kan, favor, in your sight, make me see this now your ways, that I may know you, that I may find favor in your sight. So here we have grace, if you want to call it, existing. And what is being done here? He says, and consider that this nation is your people. And Yahuwah answers and says, my presence shall go with you, and I will give you rest. So his spirit, his presence, his ruach, in the presence of nuach, rest. Does this rest substitute the Shabbat? This word nuach, which is similar to anapol, which Yahushua gives? No, it was not and still not a substitute for Shabbat keeping. Even in the presence of so-called grace, the works of righteousness do not come to an end. This is the same kind of rest Yahushua has sent us by the Spirit to comfort and assist us in the way of Yahuwah. Yahushua is not saying his rest takes away the works of righteousness at all. Here is the patience of the saints. I'm leaving this here with you now. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep what? The commandments, the Torah, the Shabbat of Elohim, and the moral conviction of Yahushua. So anybody who says Yahushua replaces the commandments is a total liar, because the two are present. Those are the two qualities of the patience of the saints. And I heard a voice from Shamayim saying unto me, Baruch thou the dead, which die in Yahuwah from henceforth. Yes, says the Spirit, that they may rest anapol. So the saints receive the rest anapol, because they keep the commandments of Yahuwah, which includes his Shabbat, and they have the moral conviction of Yahushua. They are obeying him as the master of the Shabbat. Rest from their labors, and their works do follow them. So the works are still carrying on, and we still keep the Shabbat. In Isaiah, it was further prophesied as to what rest Yahushua would be offering. Whom shall he teach knowledge, and whom shall he make to understand doctrine? Them that are weaned from the milk, and drawn from the breasts. For precept must be upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little and there a little. Oh, how many times people or pastors quote this as a positive thing being referred to here, when it is not. It's referring to people who take bits and pieces of scripture or Torah and use them out of context and without understanding, and thus making them void. It continues, for with the stammering lips and another tongue will he speak to his people. Yes, Yahushua spoke in parables, and those who did not hunger for Torah truth would not and could not understand what he was saying. In fact, they still don't understand. As to what the rest is that Yahushua gives to the weary, he now says, this is the rest wherewith he may cause the weary to rest. And this is the refreshing. Right? Did you get that? Well, this is the refreshing, the understanding of the doctrine, to teach knowledge of the Torah, to magnify the Torah, to explain it fully, preach it. That was what he came to do. So Yahushua's rest was the clear teaching of the doctrine of the Torah, not some kind of eternal Sabbath. But they would not hear. You see, you can listen, but you can't always hear. Listening is just simply allowing the waves of sound to go into your ear, but you don't process what you're listening to. You don't hear. You don't understand. The same with sight and vision. You can see with your sight, but you won't understand what you're looking at if you don't process it into vision. But the word of Yahuwah, did you hear that? The word of Yahuwah His Torah was unto them precept upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little and there a little. You see? Bits and pieces of incorrect verses, as Jokes does in his church. Nothing in context and meaningless. And what is the result of such teaching? That they might go and fall backward and be broken and snared and taken. Oh, how they love to fall backward, don't they? A physical expression perhaps of their broken, snared, and snatched away spiritual state. Broken, yes, they call it slain in the spirit. Oh, how they have been taken for a ride by the Toraless Vatican. So Yahushua's true Sabbath doctrine is rest to the weary, yet Jakes is directly opposed to being subject to doctrine, as he proclaimed in his book, if you remember. Don't be trapped by dogma. Well, dogma, basically, is a synonym for doctrine. Titus 1:9. He, an elder, must hold firm to the trustworthy word as taught, as Torah, so that he may be able to give instruction in sound doctrine / dogma, and also to rebuke those who contradict it.